Spider-Man Brand New Day marks Tom Holland's 4th outing in the titular role, as well as his 7th appearance in the wider MCU as the iconic web slinger. Directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, the film picks up 4 years after we left him in No Way Home, as Peter has been erased from existence essentially, and we're following him as he's struggling to balance his responsibilities as Spider-Man with his everyday personal struggles as Peter Parker. Now, going into this film, I was very much looking forward to seeing it. I am a fan of Spider-Man and the Spider-Man movies, but I'm not the biggest Spider-Man fan ever. I have enjoyed the Tom Holland movies for the most part. I do like this new iteration of the character, and so I was looking forward to seeing this movie, especially seeing as it looked like it was going to be more of a kind of stripped back, kind of like back to basics approach to the character, making it more of just a movie about Peter Parker and his story, and less of a big kind of like multiversal crossover movie. And on that front, I think this movie was really good and probably the best of the Tom Holland movies so far. I did really enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming for what it was, but even that movie was more of a kind of high school teen comedy take on the character and less a Spider-Man movie in its own right. I feel like the big problem with the previous Tom Holland movies I had is that they didn't really feel like proper Spider-Man movies. They felt more just like MCU kind of stepping stone movies, whereas this film felt more like an actual proper Spider-Man film. It was about Peter Parker and his story and his journey and his arc, and I really appreciate that. Unlike the previous Tom Holland movies where they had a lot of other MCU elements in there, they had a lot of other characters in there that were kind of tying it to other franchises, and the focus was never seemed to really be on Peter Parker and his story. In Brand New Day, it was about him and it was about his journey and his story, and I liked the emphasis on that. I think Destin Daniel Cretton was a really great pick for director. Kind of essentially like a director for hire for this one. He's not really like an auteur filmmaker. He doesn't have a really distinct, unique style that sets him apart. But I do like his approach with this film in terms of making it feel more like a kind of real, grounded take on the character, especially the opening of the film. I think it kind of does end up kind of becoming another kind of bit of a big, bloated, MCU movie in a sense as the film progresses. But as far as how the film opens, I really liked how it felt more grounded and more personal and more real. It felt almost like an indie movie in terms of how they were approaching shooting the film. It felt like an actual real film. I know the MCU kind of lost its way a bit over the last several years, becoming a bit too big and bloated, kind of just shooting it all on green screens, and they became a bit kind of fake and artificial. But with this film, it felt like they were actually trying to make a real film. Pretty low bar, I know, but at least it actually felt like you're watching a real movie filmed on location with actors, and I actually really enjoyed how the film opened. As far as that's concerned, it felt real, it felt personal, and I loved those kind of opening shots of Peter finally seeing him swinging through New York City as Spider-Man. It was giving me chills, to be honest with you. I was like, yes, finally, this is what I've been waiting, till movie 4 to finally see this. I think the problem with those first 3 Tom Holland movies, not that they were bad films, I did enjoy those films for what they were, but they kind of took the approach of telling the origin story of this version of the character over 3 films. So instead of like the first movie being about him becoming Spider-Man, they essentially took a whole trilogy to tell the origin story of this version of the character becoming Spider-Man. So we didn't really feel like he became Spider-Man proper until the very end of No Way Home, how that movie ended with him in the wake of Aunt May's death, moving into an apartment in New York City. He finally had the classic red and blue iconic costume from the comics, swinging through New York. But that was like the very end of the 3rd film. So as soon as that happened, I thought, right, now we've really set up for the 4th movie to be a really great Spider-Man film in its own right. And I think on that front, Brand New Day really succeeded. Once again, Tom Holland is really great in the role of Peter Parker and Spider-Man. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this iteration of the character. I do think it's good, and I do think Tom Holland is a perfect fit for the role. For me, sometimes he does feel a little bland and a little bit just like you're kind of watching Tom Holland doing an American accent. But at the same time, I do think he is a perfect fit for this character. What I appreciate about what Tom Holland had to do here compared to the previous movies is that it felt a little bit more grown up, a little bit more mature. He had kind of more to do as an actor. It felt like the focus was more on him and telling Peter Parker's story, and I think Tom Holland was really good in that respect. Zendaya also returns as MJ. She doesn't get a whole ton to do in this movie, but she is good in the role, and it's always great seeing the two of them together. Again, I'm not personally the biggest fan of it. I'm not like losing my mind, crazy and obsessed, but clearly the kids love it. I know the moment when they finally kiss in the movie, everybody's like losing their minds. I'm like, oh, okay, I don't really get it, but sure, I love that for you. The action sequences are also great in this film. I think Destin Daniel Cretton did a great job in helming those sequences. They felt more kind of real and grounded, and it was awesome seeing these action set pieces of Spider-Man battling these certain characters and these certain villains, and it just really felt like you were watching comic book splash panels brought to life on the big screen, especially the opening part of the movie that I talked about earlier. The scenes with Spider-Man versus Scorpion and versus the Hand, it was really cool seeing them brought to life on the big screen, where it felt like you were just watching a Spider-Man comic brought to life. And I don't really want to get into spoilers here, even though I don't really consider this to be a spoiler, even though it has been kept a massive secret, but everybody who knows it's super obvious, and everybody who isn't in the know isn't going to really care, and it's not going to mean anything to them, but I won't reveal it because it is a spoiler essentially. Sadie Sink and the role she plays in this movie might have been my favourite part of the movie. I can't really get into why without giving it away, but the character she played and how that character was handled and that whole aspect of the film, I actually really enjoyed, and that really worked for me, and that actually gets me really excited to see what they're going to do in the future with that character and the films that she's going to be appearing in later, I assume. Again, it's hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, but the character she was playing and her role in this movie and her story and everything about that, I really enjoyed. And I've got to admit, that aspect of the film, I was kind of worried about going in. I was like, is that going to work for me? Is that going to fit in this film? How am I going to feel about how that's essentially setting up the film she's going to be in later? But I think that part of the movie was done incredibly well, and that really worked for me. I feel like that was the most emotionally compelling part of the movie for me, especially with how it ends up at the end of the film. I don't want to get into spoilers, but yeah, her whole character and her journey and her arc and where that ends up, I really enjoyed that, and I cannot wait to see where that goes from here. And as far as negatives are concerned, although I did like this movie, I did enjoy it, I did think it was really good, I think it was probably the best Tom Holland Spider-Man movie we've had. I kind of had issues with the pacing of this film. I don't think it was paced very well. I never lost interest, I was never bored, but I just feel like the pacing was really off. I don't think it flowed very well at all. I remember after the big Spider-Man versus Hulk fight scene, I thought, oh, was that like the climax of the movie? Because it kind of felt like the climactic action scene. I'm like, that can't be the end of the movie. And then I realised, no, we've still got like an hour left, but it just felt like the movie had been on for a while at that point and it was coming to a close, and I still realised we've got so much left to go. I don't think it was paced very well. Maybe that was just a me thing, I don't know, but I feel like the pacing was really off with this. I don't think it flowed well at all. Also, some of the other Marvel characters, even though I think they did a better job in this movie compared to the other films, at the same time, I feel like a lot of the other Marvel characters just kind of felt shoehorned into this movie. Particularly the Hulk. It was cool seeing the Hulk in this movie, and I love Mark Ruffalo in the role of Bruce Banner. I think he's really good, but at the same time, I don't know if it was really necessary for him to be in this movie. It was obviously cool to see like a Spider-Man versus Hulk fight brought to life on the big screen like that, but at the same time, other than having a really cool Spider-Man versus Hulk fight scene, I don't really understand why, on a narrative level, Hulk was in this movie. He kind of didn't really need to be in this movie. They kind of had Banner in there to set up Peter creating this suppression device, but at the same time, he just figured that out by himself, so I don't really understand what the purpose of Banner and the Hulk being in this movie was narratively, other than just to have a really cool Spider-Man versus Hulk fight scene, which was cool, but at the same time, it's like, what purpose does this serve? You could take the Hulk out of this movie and it doesn't change anything. It was cool to see him. I like Mark Ruffalo in the role, but at the same time, I don't understand why he was in the movie. And yeah, that just about wraps up my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day. I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was good. I didn't love it. I didn't think it was perfect. I had some issues with it. Don't think the pacing was that great. I feel like there were other Marvel characters, like Hulk, like Punisher, that maybe didn't really need to be in the movie. And although I do think this is the best of the Tom Holland Spider-Man movies, I still felt that it came across a little flat and a little bland at times, even though there were moments of greatness, particularly the opening of the movie. I really enjoyed. It wasn't the best, but I still do appreciate how it felt more like a back to basics approach in terms of telling a story about Peter Parker and his life and his struggles, and focusing on that aspect, I think, was a real strength to this film, making it feel more mature and more grown up. Peter's slightly older now, he's out of high school. Tom Holland really stepped up in terms of delivering a really solid performance in the lead role. The movie felt more grounded and personal and relatable, and less of a big, bloated, crazy, multiversal crossover movie, which I really appreciate, and I prefer that approach, to be honest with you. So yeah, did enjoy this movie, did think it was a solid film, but didn't absolutely love it. So there we go, that wraps up my review of Spider-Man Brand New Day. What do you think about the film? Let me know in the comments down below, and if you want to catch up on my last review and you haven't seen that, be sure to go and click over here, or perhaps down here to catch up on another of my recent videos. And if you like this and you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. But until then, I'll see you next time.